Today, LA Unified School District counts the District 3 candidates. Scott Schmerelson, who's our president incumbent, and Dan Chang, who's our challenger. We're going to go through some discussions for this evening. And quick idea on the format, we're going to start off with 2 minutes of letting each one discuss what they want to and what they think is important for them. We'll come back then and go 1 minute for answers to each, back and forth. That seems like it's pretty short. We'll go a little bit kind of liberal if there's, needs more time on it. I have a timer here. You'll probably hear the bells go off to it. And then you'll hear me putting up my hands or going, hey, stop, and that's it. I'll probably take myself off the screen, so it'll just be the two candidates, but you'll be on the entire time. Don't want any crosstalks. You can leave your mics open if you wish. I don't mind that there might be, expressions of the face or noddings of the heads or what have you. That seems to go along with these type of discussions. And I also want to mention too that if one of you happens to mention the other one in a negative type of tone, I'll give that person 30 seconds to respond back to that negative comment to it, but that'll be it. In other words, if that person then mentions something bad about you, we're stopping at that stage, because otherwise we'll go back and forth all night long. That can happen. We want to stop any kind of, sniping at each other, but rather get to some of the facts and some of the questions that are there. So hopefully that's acceptable to everybody. You'll come back at the end and you'll have another 2 minutes to do it. What I will do at this point, since we know about recency and primacy in our discussions, if I may, I will start off with Scott to do his first 2 minutes, followed by Dan, and then at the end we'll do the same. Scott will do, but then Dan, you'll get the last word at that point in time. Does that sound fair to everybody?
Sure.
Go ahead for it. Scott, let me set my little timer here, which is now set, and you are up, sir. Go for it.
Thank you so much. I began in Philadelphia as a teacher there in Philadelphia for about 5 years. I taught Spanish at high schools in Philadelphia, and eventually the weather got to me, and I said, I'm heading for Southern California, got my California teaching credential, and came here in 1978 to start my teaching career in Los Angeles. I was a teacher, I was a counselor, I was an assistant principal, and I was a principal in many, many schools all over LAUSD. I was principal at Lawrence Middle School, which people may know. It's in Chatsworth. It was a great school, and I remember we had no air conditioning in that school when I first got there. We were able to get a bond measure to put air conditioning in that school. And also we started the magnet school, the gifted magnet at Lawrence Middle School. I was very proud of that. But I have worked all over the district, and my opinion is that no matter where you go across the district, people, teachers, parents, kids, they want the best for their children. And that's an important thing. And that's what I've learned being in East LA and in Central LA and in South LA. It's very important that you listen to people, hear what they have to say, and make sure that local control is very important at the schools when it comes to budget, when it comes to ideas, and that includes things like the recent problems over at Daniel Pearl, where they had to lose some teachers. I was able to negotiate with the superintendent to bring them back. I talked to the principal and I spoke to him about how we have to plan for next year to make sure that this doesn't happen again as far as marketing your school. It's all local. It's all local at our schools. It's my pleasure to be with LAUSD. I just love the kids and I love the staff, and I think everybody should be treated fairly at our schools. And that is my premise. Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. By the way, just for formalities, I think everybody knows this, but I think it bears repeating. Our organization is not permitted to endorse any candidates. We are not, by this presentation, doing any endorsements, and I don't want anyone to think by any way of our questions or comments that we're in any way supporting either candidate in this particular process. This is strictly for the information for our community. We're very pleased that both of you are here, and we thank you for that. Dan, you're up. Go for it. You're muted. Let's unmute you. There you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hu, for having us both here. Really excited. My name is Dan Chang. I'm a public school teacher. I teach math at Madison Middle School in North Hollywood. Before teaching, I have a 20-year track record of improving schools throughout Los Angeles. I helped open a philanthropy to raise money for LA Unified and bring a free breakfast to every student. I helped turn around LA's most troubled high school, a school called Locke in Watts. And before education, I actually got my start as a financial analyst, and I worked at a couple of tech startups in the Bay Area. So I have a lot of experience in the private sector as well. And, just because Zoom does a really good job, I'm actually almost 49. So I have done all those things. But really, nothing gives me more joy than what I do today, which is teach math. And I think I love the math. But I also think math is a great way to get kids to change their opinion about themselves and about their future. My average student is about 2 to 3 grade levels behind in math. And I love when they come into class, they think math is boring. They think, oh, I'm not good at it. But then they have a great experience in my class and they start to see patterns and they start to talk about it. And when that happens, there's literally that is the spark. That's when you see a student finally, for once, say, I belong in this classroom. Math is for me. And when that happens, kids really do change their minds about themselves. And so that's what I love. And that's what gets me motivated. And I want to bring some of that passion and energy to LA Unified. LA Unified has been just totally stagnant. From the time that I started in public schools 20 years ago to today, reading and math scores have not changed in LA Unified. About 70% of kids don't do math at grade level. 60% of kids don't do reading or don't read at grade level. And we need new energy and new leadership to really bring change, some passion, some energy, and some new ideas. So I'm really excited to talk about those tonight with you, and excited to have that discussion.
Well, thank you for that, and you're right on time as well on that one, Dan. Let's follow up that one now. Question: I'm gonna start with some of these questions that are there to get things going with it, but I do want you to know that those that are in the viewing, if you have questions, you raise your hand. I like to take a lot of questions from you as well tonight. But let me kind of go along with that particular theme you're talking about, Dan. And this question is Scott: how do you plan to increase the school attendance, and how do you become competitive with the other areas? As you know, one of the problems we're having in Woodland Hills, particularly, is that the school district here doesn't seem to be responsive to the people who want to move in. You got young families that want to come in with their kids. The question is, do we move into Warner Center where we have new apartments coming in and that surrounding areas, or do we go to Calabasas where we can go over to their system? And what ends up happening is we're losing out on a lot of young people coming in and a lot of families coming into our area because they're just not happy with the school district. School district has been suffering considerably. What is your plan to increase the attendance and to get us back to where we're somewhat at least competitive in the community? Scott?
Yeah, I hear you. Attendance is how the schools are funded in LAUSD, and it's very important that we take accurate attendance and make sure that all of our kids are counted. Now, we have a problem in LAUSD compared to other districts. In comparison, 85% of our kids are below the poverty level, believe it or not, in LAUSD. We have lots of services for these kids to help them and their parents that come to school every day. A lot of these kids are missing school because either they have to go to the doctor with their parents, they have to translate for their mom and dad, and they miss school. And missing school is a really, really dangerous thing for our kids because they can't afford to miss 1 minute of school, let alone a whole day of school. So we have a series of psychiatric social workers and pupil service and attendance counselors that make sure that our kids are coming to school, have what they need, and are learning. We offer free breakfast, free lunch, and those kids who stay after school, a free supper program. So we make sure the kids are fed in LAUSD. It's really serious that our kids are in this condition in LAUSD. Now, Board District 3 is quite different from the other parts of LAUSD. We have the highest scores in LAUSD. We have the highest attendance in LAUSD, and that's wonderful. But I, as a board member, I am responsible to my constituents, but I also am responsible to the rest of the kids in LAUSD to make sure they get a fair shake and a good education. Thank you.
I'll let you go over a little bit on that one. I think it's important. Dan, go ahead and you can respond to that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do we do to increase the attendance so that people don't go to other districts? How do we get a better school system, and especially out here in the Woodland Hills area?
Yeah, I think you just hit it on the head, right? We need better schools. And I think some of the things that really, as a parent, I've got 3 young kids that are school age, and the things that I look at when I am trying to pick, the right schools for my kids I look at the programs and Do they have the arts? Do they have the robotics program? What's the sports that are really great fits for my kids and who they are? And parents want to see high quality. They want to see excellence. And one of the things that happens in LA Unified, and I see it, is we're not getting enough of those programs. And part of the reason that happens is because the downtown bureaucracy literally, illegally siphons money away from local schools. I mean, if you just looked at Calabash Elementary, 45,000, Pomelo, 60,000, Welby Way, $75,000. These are actual dollar amounts for arts education that would attract these families back to our schools that last year were taken away from those schools directly, siphoned back to the LA Unified Central Office, and nobody did anything about it. Scott actually applauded the superintendent who didn't fix the problem. So we need we need new leadership. We need someone who will actually go into the budgets and will look at each and every elementary school and really do what's necessary to protect their funding so they can have these programs that parents like myself really want to see for our kids.
Scott, I heard a negative, I think, there on you. If you want to respond.
Yeah, I heard my name. That's okay. I'll answer to that. There were concerns with the Prop 28 funding for the arts. And what happened is we have an audit in place to make sure that each school was given the correct amount. But here's the problem. When schools are Title I, they're going to get more money. Title I meaning low income. They're going to get more hours in these programs that schools that are not Title I. When schools lose attendance, they're going to get less money also. So we are working on fixing that problem, but we are following to the letter the state guidelines for Prop 28.
All right, Scott, that brings us to another question having to do basically with the art situation to begin with. We understand there's been some potential mismanagement of the funds there. And there's apparently a report that's underway presently that should come out in a few weeks, I believe, maybe a couple of months. Tell us about that. Tell us about what's really going on with those art funds that were supposed to be properly distributed and the fact that those monies are not getting to where they're supposed to be. And do you expect that there's going to be some kind of criminal investigation in all of this? Or is this just basic mismanagement of LA Unified School District? What's
No,
up?
like I said before, there is an audit coming out. And I think what they're going to find in this audit, that LAUSD correctly distributed funds from Beaudry, from the center to the schools. The problem was schools that had a program last year and now have Prop 28 and don't have that same program from last year are very unhappy. And like I said before, the results have shown that there was a drop in enrollment, which caused less per pupil payment for these programs. And there also were schools, or our schools rather, that have a high Title I population that is going to get more of this money. And that's how it is. But I think the audit will show that. And I think I asked for the audit. I asked myself for the audit, and our inspector general had it planned for next year. But I asked her, can we do it this year? And she said the funding is already in place, but we are going to do it. We are going to do an audit this year too.
Dan, the same question back to you. What's going on concerning the audit? Is it mismanagement? Is somebody going to go to jail on this? What's going on with this? And
well, I think someone adds that there should be severe consequences, and I have the audit, actually. If you want me to share my screen, I'll show it to you right now. It's done. There doesn't need to be another audit. The money was clearly misappropriated in violation of the law from elementary schools. The numbers that I gave you for each school, I mean, I can give it to you for every single school in LA Unified right now if you let me share my screen. Like, that's what needs to happen in this district. Is we need leaders that don't just follow what the superintendent or the bureaucracy tells them. We need leaders to actually just dig into the numbers, which are already there. I have them, happy to share them with you right now, this moment. And then we need them to just pass a resolution that says, hey, superintendent, you need to put $30 million back into every elementary school's budget based on the fact that somebody in LA Unified misappropriated these funds from elementary schools in the 24 school year. And again, I have the numbers right here. Happy to email it to you. Happy to put it. You can put it on your website for everybody to see. But the idea that we can't immediately take action and immediately know exactly what happened is false. And again, it is right here on my desktop for everybody to see.
Dan, I appreciate that. We're not going to do sharing the screens. I think it's going to take up too much of our time tonight. I want to
Sure.
get to a lot of questions from individuals, but if you want to send it over to me, I'll be happy to put it up on our website so that people can
Would
take
love
it
to.
there. And I'm assuming they can pick it up off of your website too for the campaign as well.
Absolutely.
Let's go back and forth. By the way, somebody said that I was not giving you back questions. We're going to go back and forth to Scott and then to you. But because Scott his name was mentioned, Scott got double time at that point. So don't mention names, otherwise you get double time. Scott, this is back to you at this point in time. Here's something that's concerned, I think, a lot of people, and I think when it gets mentioned, it's kind of frightening. It always has been to me. The budget for LA Unified School District is $18.8 billion with a B for a year. That's not for like a lifetime. That's for a year. $18.8 billion. NBC News reported that there for the 24-25 school season, we have 400,000 students roughly that are in the school district. I may be wrong on these stats. Let me know if I am wrong. But if I take $18.8 billion and divide that by 400,000 students, that's $47,000 per student. If you got 30 people in a classroom, multiply that out, you can afford to pay a teacher a fortune and rebuild that classroom every year. Where is that money going? Where is it being spent? And is it being properly managed or is it being mismanaged? And what do you have to say about the existing board members that are there as to how that's being handled? Scott, that's to you, and then we'll come back to Dan on that one too.
Sure. That money is not just for teacher salaries and per pupil expenditures. That includes maintenance and operation. It includes many other parts of the district, special ed aides, campus aides, school police. There's lots of things that are involved in that budget at school. We have an enormous budget. We also have an enormous number of kids to educate with a lot of problems. That's why we have all these extras, and the extras, well, they're really not extras, they're necessities as far as I'm concerned. And those are those counselors I'm talking about, the psychiatric social workers and the pupil services and attendant counselors and all these other people who are there every single day in the trenches working with kids to make sure that they are successful at school. So it's not just a per pupil amount, and that's the budget. There's a lot of other things involved. The up-to-date maintenance at the school is a big problem. We have our custodial staff, we have our cafeteria staff, we have lots of expenditures at our school district, and it's not just the per pupil.
Dan, you're up. What do you have to say about that? What's going on concerning those funds? And it seems like $47,000 per student, if you will, if you do the divisions on it, should be enough to take care of all those particular expenses and have some money left over. What's your take?
Well, John, I got really excited when you did the math. As a middle school math teacher,
Hope I was right.
when you do the numbers, they just don't add up in LA Unified, right? You did the numbers, and I agree. We are not, as parents, as students, as teachers, we would love to see that funding back to our schools. And if we really did get that level of funding at each local school, our budgets would be triple what they are now. And the amount of just amazing work, like I work with amazing teachers, with that much money at our school site, it's not there. It's like I said, it's in downtown, it's in Beaudry, it's in these crazy overhead numbers. We would take off. All of our schools would take off. And that's really what we need to see. I mean, we fundamentally have to cut the bureaucracy, get our money back to our school, get decision-making back, and no more of these district mandates. And then again, you'll see the programs, you'll see the math and reading scores take off, and you'll see families coming back to our local schools. And so I can't wait to get into the district and sit on a school board.
Got you on that. It's got to be a daunting task, I think, for anybody that's over there, because you got to work with the board too. Question back to you, Scott. Now, on the how many students? This could be a question. How many students do we have out here in our district, and what's the quality of the schools that we have out here, as far as both the physical structures, as well as the curricula, and as well as the abilities to be able to take care of the students, whether they have disabilities or don't have. So what's the quality of our schools out here? How many students do we have, and how many schools do we have out here in our district?
Well, LAUSD has almost, over 900 schools in total. Here in the Valley, we are, like I said before, we are the highest scoring schools in our district. We have the highest scores, and I think that we have the highest surveys of being content with the schools. There are lots of problems all over, but for some reason, LAUSD, local district North, which is part of our, it includes Kelly Gomez's district, which is north of us in Board District 6, and part of Nick Melvoin's district, which is mostly in Woodland Hills area. But our schools are performing very, very well, and our parents show in surveys a sense of contentment with the schools and how they're being run. We also have lots of local control at our schools. Parents have a voice. Well, they should have a voice in all schools, but I make sure that parents have a voice in all of our schools with decision-making, with spending, things like that.
Dan, question over to you. What's the quality of the schools we have out here? How many students do we know that we have out here in the schools? And how is the educational quality beginning to stack up out here in the Valley?
Yeah, if our students and our families need more, right? In this economy and the world that they are entering with artificial intelligence and everything that we see, 55% reading scores don't cut it. 64% math, 64% of students not proficient at grade level at math, that doesn't cut it. We need better. Our students need better so they can be competitive. And the last point I'll make is, if you look at surveys of students in LA Unified, what you actually see, what's very alarming, is all the public safety issues we see in our streets, we're seeing in our schools. And our students are saying that they need help. They don't feel safe in an LA Unified campus. You go to Cleveland High School, multiple incidents. Van Nuys High School, multiple violent incidents taking place on campus. So our education has to improve, but let's start with student safety. Let's get more school police back on campuses so that we can actually make our students feel safe so they can learn again.
Scott, over to you on a similar issue to it. What is your plans, ambitious plans to be able to make sure that the campuses out here in the Valley are better and that the school curriculum is better? What is your plan, and what do you plan to do if you're in office again at this point in time to improve that? And then we'll come back and ask you, Dan, that same question. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, we've had several major modernization projects here in the Valley. Sherman Oaks Center for Enriched Studies, North Hollywood High School, Kennedy High School. Right now, we're working on Canoga Park High School. We are improving our schools to the 21st century technology and the best possible teaching stations possible for all our kids. I want you to know that my mantra is that you cannot have good achievement unless you have safety at the schools. You must have safety at the schools. So right now, when Dr. McKenna retires, I will be the only school board member who supports school police. The only one. The only one. And I am very, very concerned about having safety at our schools to keep that improvement coming. We do have campus aides supervising. We do have climate advocates there. We do have supervision aides. But school police, in my opinion, is a must. They're the only people who will protect life and property. No one else will do that except school police.
Well, following up on that, Dan, what's the situation as far as improving the campus to where you can have a better school district out here? What do we need to do, both from a curriculum standpoint or from the infrastructure? What needs to be done?
LA Unified has $8.7 billion of approved, but not yet issued bond funds coming down the pipe. We should use and reallocate those funds to make sure the Valley gets its fair share, which historically it has not. And then the second thing I'd say is to improve math and reading scores. We know what to do, right? A problem-based math curriculum and a reading curriculum based on the science of reading, which is a fancy name for phonics, but a lot of research has been done to make it even better. Those are the things that work. So we're going to go and implement those curriculums, and we're going to do it from the ground up with successful schools that have proven results. We're going to bypass the bureaucracy. We're going to give those schools the resources to train other teachers at other schools. And the way that we lift the floor on student achievement is from the bottom up through our schools and outside of the bureaucracy. And maybe if you'll just give me 5 more seconds, I'd like to just pose a question back to Scott for him for 30 seconds. Scott says that he supports school police, but he actually was the one to cut the school police budget by $25 million. So I would love to know why he did that.
Scott, your name got mentioned. You've got.
Well, I have heard this from Dan Chang so many times. It is absolutely not true, number one. Number two, I am supported by school police. I am endorsed by school police. So I don't understand why he keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. Check my webpage and you'll see the biggest supporter right there is LAUSD School Police. So that is absolutely not true.
All right, Scott, next question. You're finished up on that one, Dan. No, you didn't.
No,
we're not going to go back and forth on name calling.
Okay.
We're doing it all night long on the same issue.
Well, I mean, but he called me a liar. Do I not get to respond to that?
You can respond to it the next time up. Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk about. Either way, that was the rules at the beginning. If one person mentions the other, we got to stop it at some point. So
okay, yeah.
I know it's not going to be fair to somebody, and I'm going to get yelled at, and somebody's going to send me some nasty emails later on. I know it, but I got to make a call where I can. Let's talk about charter schools. Scott, to you, what's your feeling about charter schools? Are they good? Are they bad? What's going on with them sharing some of the facilities? What's the implication with the teachers union and those type of things? What's your position? Where do you stand with charter schools?
Right. We have 3 of the biggest independent charter schools in the whole LAUSD, and that is El Camino Real, that is Birmingham High School, and Granada Hills High School. Those teachers, by the way, are LAUSD UTLA employees. Let me just say that
they're not LA Unified employees.
Hold on, Dan.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, hold on, Dan.
I'm sorry.
Your time.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Scott. I don't mute you. Don't make me come back there. Go ahead, Scott.
They belong to UTLA and they are contracted by UTLA. So let me just tell you, I get along really well with my fellow independent charter school fellows. I have helped El Camino several times in finishing their football field and in their heating and air conditioning problems. El Camino is a good friend with both teachers and administrators. Same thing with Birmingham High School. Good relationship with the neighboring schools. Next door is Daniel Pearl, and Lake Balboa is down the street. They share the field, they share parking. It's a great combination. But those schools are also very open and upfront, and they let people know what's happening at their schools, and that's what's so important. What I don't like is Prop 39 schools. And in case some of your members don't know, Prop 39 is where a charter school has to share facilities with a traditional LAUSD school. It's a big problem when you have to share time in the gym and the auditorium and entranceways. It's not a good. I'd rather they be independent away from our traditional schools.
Thank you, Scott. Dan, go ahead. You're up.
Sure.
Yeah. So charter schools are an important source of innovation and progress for our public school system. I'm proud to support charter schools and high quality schools throughout the district. And just to make a couple of points, one, and we'll let Scott have 30 seconds to maybe respond to all of these things. But one, February 16th, 2021, Scott voted to cut the school police budget by $25 million. It's part of the record. So one, he should respond to that instead of, doing what politicians do, which is when they don't like something in their record, they call the other person a liar when the record is clear. Second, I would say, like a politician, Scott likes to say things like, I get along with everybody. And when in fact, he actually goes and protests and demonstrates at charter school principals' houses, which I find very odd and just sort of doesn't, the facts just don't add up a lot of times. So, there's 1 minute I could go on. I would like to talk a little bit more about Prop 39 and my experience and some of the leadership that I've taken there. But if we get a chance to come back to that question, we'd love to talk about it more.
You can talk about anything that you want in your minutes with the time. Scott, he gave some stuff.
Yes, thank you.
We don't want to see this degenerate into He said, you
Okay.
said, but rather.
I know. I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. The facts. The
30
facts.
The
I have
facts.
never visited a charter school owner's house. I don't even know where they live, to be honest with you. I do not do that, number one. Number two, I had asked the board secretariat, would you please search the records and see where I did not approve school police during my career? And the answer was he could not find that. So that's what I have to say. And I would never say liar because I didn't say liar. I never say that.
All right, Scott, let's go to this.
Sure.
What difficulties you have other board members you have to deal with at downtown? What difficulties do you have in dealing with the other board members, and how well are you able to be integrated with them and to work with them? In other words, what's the fellowship like down there? And I guess it kind of goes along with, are we able to get our fair share out here in the Valley because of the need for coalitions between different members of the board? So what is the difficulties in dealing that you face with the board downtown? And then Dan, you'll have a similar question, which would be, what do you expect that you'd be facing to it? Scott, you're on for your minute. Go ahead, Scott.
Yes. We all have to get along, as we heard that statement many, many times. We must get along. We have different ideas about how we should do things at the board. But I'll say this, every one of the board members is for better education for kids, better for their teachers, and better for parents to be involved in the schools. So that is one thing that we're all on the same wavelength. We do support each other as far as kids and for parents and involvement in school. The problem comes out many times when we're all fighting for something for our own district, and I fight for Board District 3 all the time, and I have an eye open all the time to make sure if Board District 2 is getting this, I have to make sure that we're going to get this too. If a magnet school is opening in Board District 4, I have to make sure that we're going to get our fair share of magnet school. So getting along is important, and we all have the same goal of improving student education. So, we do have differences. Even with good friends, sometimes we don't agree 100%, but we agree for that. Okay, thank you.
Dan, question to you. What do you see as the difficulties working with the board and being able to develop coalitions with them and being able to, again, get, quote, a fair share out here to the Valley and working with developing those coalitions that are necessary to do that?
Yeah, I think leadership is having a plan, being able to build the coalition to get the plan executed. And I have a plan to improve LA Unified and to change fundamentally the trajectory of the district. It starts with student safety. I'm going to get 4 votes to bring back our school police. It goes to improving our math and reading scores. We're going to get the district aligned around problem-based math, the science of reading. And third, we're going to cut the district bureaucracy, and we're going to get money to local schools. We're going to stop the fraud, waste, and abuse that we see happening with Prop 28. We're going to stop the fraud that's happening with attendance. I can't wait for us to talk about the bond and all the money that has already been issued and is allocated and coming down the pipe, the $18 billion per year that you talk about, John. That's the plan. And getting 4 people to support that plan is my job as a board member, using the coalitions and the influence and the facts and the math and making it all add up. That's what I'm excited to do, and doing it from the lens of, hey, classroom teacher, math teacher, budget expert.
Very good. We have a question from our audience. Looks like Adia, you
Yes.
can speak with your question.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Dan, you are supported by the charter, and from what we have seen, the charter must have spent a ton of money on your election. Mr. Schmerelson does not have that kind of money. All I hear from you is negative, and all I hear from him is positive. You just named Pomelo, Welby Way, all these schools that they don't have anything. We have the best robotics. We also have great art program, music program, theater. We have a lot of programs. I wish you would come down to our schools, check them out, and then kind of throw our name over here in a very negative way.
Let's get to a question.
Can I respond to the comment, maybe?
No, my question is this. Mr. Chang, you're telling us that LAUSD is wasting all that money. I wish the charter organization, I have a question for you, that spends all that money on electing you, would tell you, I'll give you this money, spend it on the schools.
Okay, well, good. Dan, let's go ahead and have you answer that first, and then we'll go back over to Scott. We'll take a bit out of order. So Scott, you'll get double time on this one. But Dan,
I'm sorry. Why does Scott get? Sorry. Why does Scott get double time? I'm not sure.
All right, we'll do this because I normally go. Scott gets the first question, you get it afterwards. So very frankly, the idea of it is that Scott, who's the incumbent, gets the question. You get to prepare for the question, so you get to answer it secondly. So let's go back to the regular format to it. Scott, do you wish to respond to what that lady's question was?
Yeah, I know Pomelo. I know all my schools. I have 105 schools. I know them very well. Pomelo does have a great art program and a great music and theater program. Our schools have what they need. A lot of it, I have to say, a lot of it is raised by PTA. PTA is invaluable in our West Valley schools. Whenever you have a limited number of Title I students, the money is not the same as other schools get. And that's a federal program. You can't change that. You cannot change the federal program. But PTA, our people in the PTA are the ones who supplement these programs. And I'm very thankful to them.
Dan, you're on.
So I'll say a couple of things. First and foremost, Pomelo is owed $60,000 by the district central office. So I know Pomelo. I've talked to numerous people at Pomelo. I know it's a great school. $60,000 could help. It actually would have added 2 additional days of arts teachers at your school last year. So my job is to help you get that money and to make your school even better and attract more families to your school. That's what I'm about. And I'm really proud of the grassroots campaign that I've run. I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of grassroots donors that have supported my campaign. I spend my time raising funds so that I can communicate broadly with Board District 3. And so proud of that achievement.
Very good. All right. For those that in the audience do have questions, please raise your hand. I'll be happy to take those. Let's start, Scott, with you again on this. What are the difficulties in dealing with the teachers union? You guys are, I'm assuming, are being bombarded constantly with the teachers union requesting things to be done. Where are you as far as being supported by or in opposition to or dealing with the teachers union? And how does that affect your abilities to be able to properly govern the LA Unified School District? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly of the...
I hear you. I hear you. I am supported by the teachers union. I'm also supported by the administrators union. And I know what's best for our schools. Now, I think that we have to make sure that our teachers and our administrators are paid sufficiently so that we don't lose them to other districts, number one. To retrain teachers and administrators at LAUSD is a very, very expensive proposition. I want to do everything I can to keep them at school and keep them working at school. Our teachers need to earn a decent living. They need to be paid for what they do. You know, I will not go against my principles of making sure, principles with LES, principles of making sure that our kids get the best education possible. I'm never going to compromise on that. I will never compromise on that. What's the best for the kids is what the kids get. Sometimes we won't agree. I don't agree with everything that the teachers union says. I don't agree with everything that AALA, the administrators of Los Angeles, say. But I have to keep an open mind, listen to them, and know that we have to have the best people possible with our kids. I hear you. Okay, thank you.
Dan, your response, what's the difficulties with the teachers union? How are you able to interface with them, and what kind of impediments or assistance do you expect to have from the teachers union if you were to sit on the board?
Absolutely. So I'm a teachers union member, proud member of UTLA, and UTLA is the most organized and influential and powerful special interest group in public education in Los Angeles, hands down. So we have to have an open dialogue. We have to talk to them, and where we are aligned on things like lower class sizes and more local control, we are going to build those relationships, and we're really going to move the needle. And I'm really excited about that. And where we disagree we just have to go our separate ways. Like, I'm always going to have an eye on all of the constituents in the board district, not just the teachers, but everybody. And that's important. And I think that's a very important point for this election, because UTLA has spent millions and millions of dollars on Scott's candidacy over the last 3 election cycles. And so, I think the big question is for everybody here is like, hey, when there are a lot of head scratching decisions that are made in LA Unified, and who is Scott making those decisions for?
Scott, I'm not sure if that was a negative that was done on that one. If you wish to respond, I'll let you do it.
Well, sure. My decisions are made for the benefit of the kids, their parents, period. Thank you.
All right. Marty Lipkin, one of our board members, has got a question. Marty, go ahead.
All right. Am I coming through? Can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine,
Yes.
Marty. Go ahead.
All right. I've got 3 questions. I'll only ask one at a time. I'll let you come back to me, John.
I will definitely do so. The first goes to Scott, and then Dan will respond to it as well.
Well, this is one for both of them.
I understand. Go ahead. First one is Scott will respond first.
After looking back at our new supervisor, the head of LAUSD, his performance, he seems to not recognize that there's anybody that actually lives and goes to school in the San Fernando Valley, and especially the West San Fernando Valley. Seems like his attention and his affections are all showered on East LA, South LA, and Central LA. How do we get more of this guy's attention? How do we get more of his supervision, which he's supposed to be performing? And how do we get more support for the West Valley School? Okay, that's my first question. Thanks.
Go ahead, Scott. I'll let you down on that one.
Sure. Everybody wants a piece of the superintendent, and I understand that, and I agree with that. He has been very supportive of the West San Fernando Valley with me. Porter Ranch Middle School was having a problem with space. I had him come out 3 different times to Porter Ranch from Beaudry to talk to the parents, to see what's happening. And now we have a construction project going on at Porter Ranch Community School to make sure that the kids who start in kindergarten can go all the way to 8th grade. So he does listen, believe it or not. You may think that he's heavily involved in other areas of the city, which he is. You are quite right, Martin. But he does give his fair share to the San Fernando Valley. I make sure that happens.
Dan, you're on. What's your response to that about the?
I would say it starts with doing the basic fundamental job of a school board member, which is to provide oversight and hold the superintendent accountable. The school board has not done that yet. And again, these are head scratching decisions that are happening at LA Unified, and where the superintendent gets no pushback. Prop 28 is a perfect example. We've talked that one to death. But how about this school bond? The superintendent wants to do a $9 billion school bond, wants to raise all of our property taxes for the first time in decades for a school district that already has $9 billion coming in for facilities, for a school district that is shrinking and will only be about 300,000 students by the year 2030, and for a facilities project that allows literally, this whole bond is premised on the idea that they could rebuild every single LA Unified school from scratch, all 75 million square feet. It's absurd, and the superintendent is not getting oversight, and he is not being held accountable.
Very good. Marty, you've got another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, my second question to both of you is, right now, there's a number of empty schools and empty school lots, both in the West Valley, in this area. They tore down the existing school, and there's been a lot of discussion over what to do with them. 4 years ago, Scott, you addressed this body, and the question was asked, would you let the school district either sell or trade those empty lots? And would you tear down the other empty school buildings? And if I recall from 4 years ago, I believe your answer was no, you would absolutely fight tooth and nail to see that those properties remained as school properties and that the things weren't torn down. That's what you said 4 years ago. I don't know where your position is today. Dan, you and I and another member of this board had a discussion at the neighborhood council. And you came out and said you want to see all those properties. You didn't say all. You said you want to see those properties turned into low-income housing and redeveloped that way. And we went after you pretty tooth and nail at that meeting. Do you still hold that position? So that's the question broken into two pieces.
And if I may, for our listeners to make sure we have some background to it, that the Oso school property and the Collins school property are presently vacant as far as being used as schools. One of the programs that have been looked at is a property swap. And the idea is to give that property, I'll put it in those terms, give that property to a developer, and then that developer would buy another piece of property that would be supposedly like and similar that they can place in another part of the city that the school district could end up using, or the city can end up using for something as well. And the problem that we're having, again, that kind of add into your questions as well, Marty, is that we have a large development that's going on in the Warner Center. If it gets built out with a number of apartments that are coming in, and if that happens, if we're able to attract younger people with children, we're going to need schools as well. And that's the money that we had spent on school properties to be built out here. And so with that background to it, Scott, go ahead on what your position is presently.
Sure.
What's to happen with those schools, whether or not they should be
Sure.
or they're to be maintained as educational properties.
Sure. Thank you, Martin, for the question. The two schools that you mentioned are not my schools. They are Mr. Melvoin's schools. What my school is Highland Avenue. And I made a promise, and my promise is the same. We tore down that school. It was so badly infected with mold and all this other stuff. So we cleared the property, and I make sure that we're mowing the lawn and keeping it nice. And by the way, whenever we tear down the school like that, we're responsible for paying real estate tax on those schools where schools are normally not, they're free of tax. So anyway, I would never do that. I promised the neighbors, I promised the parents I would never do that. Now, what I tried to do—
That includes Platt Ranch School too?
Platt is mine. Platt is mine, correct. Platt is mine. But the other, I think you mentioned Collins and—
I mentioned Collins specifically and Oso
Yeah.
as well. Those are the ones.
Yeah, they're not mine.
The area. The concept, however, is similar. Those were initially educational properties.
Right. Let me just tell you that I worked with John Lee, and I went to his office at City Hall. I would only agree to having the Highland property become a dual senior citizen center, because there is no senior citizens out there. There's nothing out there, with an addition of a early ed center on the same property, which I think senior citizens and early ed kids go very well. So that's what I would agree to, but no housing.
Dan, go ahead with your response to it. What would you do with those vacant LA Unified School District properties? Are they maintained for educational purposes or be used for something else?
Marty, I would partner with WHO. We would sell those properties and sell those properties for developments that are 100% consistent with what is exactly around them. So Platt Ranch, Highland Road, if it's single family housing that is around those school sites, that's what should go in. LA Unified has a $1 trillion real estate portfolio, yet they are coming back to the taxpayers who raise our taxes for another $9 billion on top of the $9 billion they have coming in. It is the height of absurdity. Let's sell less than 1% of LA Unified's $1 trillion real estate portfolio for a shrinking school district that will only have 300,000 kids, that currently has enough classrooms for 600,000. Let's just sell 1% of the portfolio, and we don't have to go to the taxpayer for any of that money. And let's do it in conjunction with WHO, so that we make sure that whoever does buy that property is going to develop in accordance with exactly what is around it.
Let me follow up on that one to both of you, to Scott. If that was to be the case, that those properties there's 5 of them that are out here basically in the West Valley portion. If those properties were to be sold off or to be traded off at that point in time, and the Warner Center was to be developed the way that they're talking about with housing units and apartment units, would that be without those properties around, without the prospect of schools coming in? What are we going to do on attracting people with kids to come into that area? Where are we going to put them in schools? What are we going to do with building new schools? Where are we going to find the property for that? And in addition, are we just going to have to bus the kids to another location to fill up those other schools that they say that they have empty places to it? Scott, with you first, and then come back to you.
Yeah, we discussed this about 4 years ago about the upcoming Warner Center influx of people and children coming in. I spoke to our chief facilities officer, and I was told that it's easy, very easy to add modulars to our schools that exist now. They have the space, they have the room. There's no need to build new schools at this time. Number one. Number two, I would not trust anybody with our properties. Whenever they say, we're going to build it according to the area around the school, I do not trust them. I do not trust them. I'm afraid that they are going to do whatever is most profitable for themselves.
Dan, you're on.
Yeah, LA Unified has classroom capacity for 600,000 students. It currently has less than 430,000 students of enrollment. That enrollment is decreasing by 2.4% year over year. LA Unified's own projections are that the district will only have about 310,000 students by 2030. There is plenty of classroom capacity. There's plenty of budget. We're going to modernize the schools with the existing bond funds we have to attract new families from Warner Center. And then we're going to use our real estate portfolio, and instead of going back to the taxpayer to raise their taxes for schools that we don't need because we are a declining enrollment district, we can sell our properties and do it in a way that's consistent with the existing housing and the community that those facilities are in. I don't understand why we would hold on to them when we don't need the facilities and we don't need to come out for a bond to raise our taxes. We have $1 trillion real estate portfolio.
Very good. Marty, I see you have another question. By the way, the Woodland Hills Homeowners has supported that those properties should be maintained for educational purposes. What that means is perhaps open for definitions of that. Marty, go ahead with your other question.
No, I just want to point out that we have a rapidly aging and aged population out here in the West Valley, and these houses are going to be sold to families. If we fill up these properties that exist, like the Platte Ranch or Highlands or whatever, and the other ones that may not be in the District 3, where are all those kids supposed to be going? It's just this, we're going to have families moving in. I know right now that LAUSD is shrinking, but shrinking is not a permanent status. And the problem is, you sell the property, you can't manufacture property again. It's gone. So I just
Marty, we have 600,000 classroom seats.
Hang on, Dan. I'm gonna give you a question. It's really a follow-up on Marty's.
Right,
Marty.
I'm done.
Would you be willing to release the demographic studies of what we have in these particular areas? As you know, some of the school sites are surrounded by single-family homes with limited access. Many of these neighborhoods are experiencing young families moving into those locations. Would you consider using those properties for preschools or for early learning centers to be built on those properties, or is it just strictly that your position is they should just be sold? Scott, first to you and then to Dan.
I don't sell any real estate. That's one of the few things that keep their value. That I would not sell any real estate. And I'm glad Marty mentioned something about senior citizens, because that's one of the reasons I was working with John Lee to make a senior citizen center out there, along with more of our early ed centers. The salvation of LAUSD is that more and more students are enrolling in the UTK, the early ed programs, and that is where our enrollment is going to keep growing and growing. And I'm very happy about that. And that was a wise decision on the superintendent to start it earlier than normal, because we do need that growth. We do need that enrollment. And that's what I intend to do. Don't sell.
Dan, go ahead. You can respond.
Yeah, I think, when you just look at the numbers and the plain facts of where LA Unified is as a district, it's sort of undeniable what the enrollment numbers are. And the fact that the real estate portfolio is completely misaligned to the actual needs of the district is something that you should absolutely look at. And if it means selling a few properties, that makes a lot of sense, because what doesn't make sense is coming back to the taxpayer and raising all of our taxes for facilities we don't actually need. So sales of properties should absolutely be on the table. There's a great partnership that we can do with the city for senior housing, for early childhood centers. Let's make sure that the numbers are there, and then we can pursue it. But right now we are in a massively declining enrollment situation. We have way too much facility, and the district is still coming out to the taxpayer to raise our taxes for $9 billion on top of the $9 billion that's already coming in. For what? I'm not quite sure. So let's not run the bond. Let's not have it. And let's sell less than 1% of our portfolio. And if we really need that $9 billion, that's where we should get it from.
Question from Chris Rowe comes in that she'd like to know about the COVID vaccines and the monkeypox, et cetera. I'd like to know about the testing for those illnesses in the school systems and the use of masks in the school system. Do you support it? Those testing of the children for those type of items, for the use of masks in schools or not? Scott, where are you on those issues?
Yes. We still have our current required immunizations for all children entering school, and also at certain grade levels where the nurses check to make sure that they're up to date with their immunizations. When it comes to things like COVID and masking, that is something that is decided by the LA County Health Department. We follow what they say very carefully, and we do what they do. I don't want to be a maverick in doing things that the LA County Health Department says is not necessary. If it is necessary, we do it. If it's not necessary, we will not do it. But we do follow through with all our immunizations necessary for the kids. I haven't heard any cases of monkeypox, thank God, at LAUSD so far. But, we have to constantly be vigilant. Lots of kids are coming in from other countries who have never been inoculated in many of these diseases like polio. So we have to be very, very careful to make sure that our kids are safe at school with each other and with the teachers too, and staff, of course.
Good. Dan, you're on.
Yeah, LA Unified kept its schools closed far too long. And as a classroom teacher, when I saw my kids again after that, it was very clear. We were the last school district to open, and we could have done it sooner. We could have done it with less impact to the education, the mental health of our students and families, and we should have. That's just a fact. And I think any board member that you ask would actually say, yeah, we could have done that. So we have to be mindful of the world that we live in now, with all of the communicative, all of the diseases that are spreading. And I look forward to doing that. But also just, again, maintaining a high level of oversight on the board, looking at the facts, looking at the data, and making reasonable decisions, and not just waiting for a superintendent or the county Department of Health to tell us what to do. We have to make the right decisions for our students and families, for our community. And that's what leadership is.
Quick question to you. If you give me a short answer, this might be good. There's been some talk about pulling the cell phones away from students in the classroom because it caused a lot of extra anxieties and distractions. Can you give us a quick position as to where you are with that, Scott, and then for Dan too?
Yes. I am the only board member, along with George McKenna, who voted no on this resolution. We have a policy already for cell phones. We have a policy where you may not use them during instructional time in class. You may not. It's a matter of following the policy. I have a survey going out on Facebook about what parents think, what kids think. The majority of parents want their kids to have a cell phone in case of an emergency, earthquake, shooting, fire, whatever, but never to use it during instructional time. And that's my whole premise. No phones out while teachers are teaching. It's just so rude and it's just terrible, but have it in case of an emergency. That is my.
Where are you on this, Dan?
Cell phone free schools is a gift to our kids and our adolescents who are right now being preyed upon by big technology companies who develop algorithms to get our young children and our adults, quite frankly, addicted to content. And we have an opportunity to give them a 6-hour window in their life where we can break that addictive cycle. And this is going to happen way ahead of Congress doing the regulations they should, because social media companies and big tech are very clearly harming the mental health of our students. So we can do this. We should do it. It is the right and moral thing to do. And we will come up with a policy to make sure that students have access to communications in an emergency. Starts with me. I told my students about the cell phone free policy. And I said, look, if something goes down, I'll give you my cell phone. You call your parents, you text them, you do what you need. But this is a gift, and I'm really supportive of it.
Shelley Schwartz, one of our board members, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a point of clarification, then I have a comment. Dan, I'd just like to say that the WHO had many meetings with LAUSD, chair of facilities, all the people involved in construction and the real estate division, and they were very clear that it is absolutely not possible for LAUSD to control what is developed on a site once it is sold. They were very specific about that. So what you're saying is a pipe dream. It sounds great, but we were told it's absolutely not possible. And it makes sense. I can sell my house to you. I can't control what you do.
Dan, you can spell.
So,
and like nobody control after something.
Hold on, Dan. Hold on, Dan. Let her finish with her question, and then we'll come back. You get a chance to respond.
And we asked it many different ways to many department heads, and they were very honest in that if we were to make conditions on what could be developed on any property we were attempting to sell, it would greatly devalue that property, which is why we will never do that. So I just want to make clear that this was discussed with members of the WHO and the community with the real estate division of LAUSD. So in that sense, Scott is correct. You can't trust that.
Shelley, we're gonna give him a chance to respond to that. But first, is there a question that you have for both of them at
Yes,
this point?
there is a question I'd like to ask.
We'll come back to it, Dan. Don't worry.
This week, it came out that at a 2024 UTLA Leadership Conference, and the conference was called The Question of Palestine in UTLA. And it's been all over the news that there were some very, very biased discussions that took place at that conference, including attacking Jewish elected officials, attacking the curriculum about the Holocaust and genocide education. Teachers were bragging, people seen it all over the city, how they use their positions as teachers to promote bias in the classroom and organize student protests against Israel. Now, I'm asking this question not just
let me interrupt you for
Yes.
just a moment. I want to come back to the original comment you gave for Dan to be doing too. I thought there was going to be a question on that. We're going to finish up on the security issues with the school because we're getting about 15 minutes into the 9 o'clock hour. But I want to stay on this. We'll come back to you, Shelley, if you don't mind. I want to come back to Scott and to Dan about the comments. And I was at that meeting too that Shelley was talking about. That once those properties are turned loose, especially with what's going on presently with the state legislature, with a lot of the bills that that Legislative Wiener has proposed, that we don't have the local control over those properties like we used to. Scott, what is your understanding of the fact if those properties are to be released as to what we can and cannot do with them? And then Dan will give you a chance to respond to Shelley's comment to that too. So try to keep it short if we can, but we want to get to the safety issue, which I think is probably a major concern to everybody too.
I'll keep it real short. Shelley is absolutely correct. Once they're released, anything can happen. Anything can happen. You could have a swap meet built next door. Anything can happen.
Not true.
You have to be very careful.
That's not true.
Very careful.
That's not true.
Dang, hang on. Go ahead, Scott. Finish up.
Anything can happen. Anything can happen. You know, I'm very much in favor of homeless housing, but I don't think that my neighbors at Highland would want a homeless shelter built next to their properties, and when it doesn't even fit in the neighborhood. There are places to put things, of course. You have to be so careful. I can't do that. I would never do that to them. I would never sell their properties. Never.
Okay. Dan, go ahead. You have a chance to respond.
So, obviously there are zoning laws, so not everything can happen. And I don't propose to say that I would sell the property or the district would sell the properties and it would have control over it, right? I'm only saying that, hey, if we're going to sell the properties, we should sell it to developers who have an intention to build single family homes that are very consistent with the neighborhood. That is my point. I'm not trying to say that we would collectively, whether it's WHO or LA Unified, be able to control exactly what happens on those properties after it is sold.
Well, we'd hope that you'd go back on that and take a good look at that. We've been dealing with developments out here, and as you know, there's been an attempt to eliminate all the single family homes because you just can't build it. We talked about that earlier. And given some of the wiener bills that are up there, they can take it in the single family locations and build 8-story apartments right next to single family homes without any.
We're dealing with the same thing in Sherman Oaks.
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
And
so I interrupt you. Go ahead. You can finish up. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm part of SOHA, and we're advocating for the same things. And I live on one of those blocks with single family homes, so I understand it completely.
Okay, very good. Marty, it looks like. I'm sorry, Shelley.
No, wait. Let me just tag on to this.
Marty, go ahead. You got a question on it, but let's stay. It's not an education session for them, but rather for our listeners to be educated on. Stay to a question so they can educate us.
Got it. Well, I wanted to bring up the stance of the state school superintendent, Tony Thurmond, who has voiced support and has talked about his vision of turning all of the empty schools into denser housing for teachers, okay, and school staff. Meaning he's not talking about single family homes, he's talking about apartment buildings that were basically owned and operated apparently by the state school. You guys, both of you agree with that? Do you not agree with that? I'd like to know where you stand.
Good. Scott, you're up first.
Yes, I believe that teachers should have housing built where they can afford to live in the areas where they're teaching. Now, where this housing is put is a different story. The concept of teacher housing, I absolutely support. Where it goes, that needs to be discussed.
Dan, go ahead.
We have to build consistent with the community. If it's a single family community, then we should have single family houses that are consistent with look and feel. We shouldn't have McMansions popping up in single family, neighborhoods where most of the dwellings are single story. We deal with that, in Sherman Oaks. I know it's happening in Woodland Hills. And as a homeowner of a, 1947 home in Sherman Oaks, I love my neighborhood and I love the way it looks and feels. So I would love, it is in my DNA to protect that. And Tony Thurmond has his own plans. He's running for governor. And so he's going to say a lot of things. And those are not the things that I would advocate for as the board District 3 representative.
Very good. Let's finish up on the issues then having to do with security and safety, I guess, for the kids. And Shelley,
John, can I finish my question?
You're going to, Shelley. That's
okay.
right. I'm setting you up for it. Hang in.
Okay.
Hang in there. Okay, we're coming to you here. Listen, as an example, Karen Bass, our mayor, has indicated they're doing something like more than 450 slow zones and 250 speed bumps around the schools in order to be able to protect the children while they're walking to campus. That's not some of the problems. I think we have other problems that are going on concerning security to it. And that's where I think Shelley's coming in with her question. Shelley, let's go back to it and finish up those questions concerning the security issues. And we can finish up with that being the last question. And we come to you, gentlemen, with your closing. Go ahead, Shelley, with your questions.
Sure. So, as I said, my question is not just referring to anti-Semitism, which is rampant right now. It's to make sure that all students of every ethnicity, race, anything feel safe in schools. And when you have your teachers union and you had an incident with your own president of the school board, what will you do to ensure that teachers, school board members who violate the standards that LAUSD sets, how will they be accounted for, and how are kids going to feel safe no matter who they are or what they believe in? Because there was just a survey by the LA Times released last week that kids feel less safe in schools than they did before. Thank you.
And that's the difficulty for both of you is what are we doing? It has to do with ethnic issues. It has to do with sexual orientation issues. It has to do with what the religions are. What are we doing? What is your plan? What is your plan to make sure, especially out here in the Valley, that the kids are going to be safe? Scott, you're up first.
I have always stood firmly against discrimination of any kind to any kind of people, Asian discrimination, Jewish American discrimination, Muslim discrimination, African American discrimination.
I think we're all in that area. What are we going to do to make sure these kids are safe in that particular process? How do we harden this stuff so that this doesn't cause problems? Especially we have some teachers that are going off the rails on some of these.
That is so true. And let me just tell you that I am very, very well aware what's going on with the UTLA training and what's happening, what's being said. You know, there is an ethnic studies program, and I was so happy when the ethnic studies program appeared because I felt, my goodness, now everyone will get along and understand each other, their ethnicities, their struggles, what happened. Well, what happens is it kind of gets off the rails, as your term, John, and there's ethnic studies that the district adopted, which I think is an excellent ethnic studies program, but now there's something called the liberated ethnic studies program. So I'm watching. Let's just say I'm keeping my eye on this. Gosh.
Okay, Dan, you're up. What do we do? What do we do to harden this area to protect these kids? What's the plan? What's the plan? Up, you're
on mute, Dan. You're on mute. You're on mute.
There you go.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we shouldn't have liberated ethnic studies in our schools, period. And we can't have the most influential group in LA Unified. We can't have its leadership. We have to hold them accountable to for the anti-Semitism that is just clear and outright and blatant, right? UTLA has almost passed BDS resolutions for, each of the last 5 years. And these people are extremely influential. And so we have to call them and hold them to account. I talk to my students and during our advisory time, we watch what is happening and we watch the news, and it is shocking to me how almost none of my students really understand the Holocaust and how little the Holocaust, actually occupies as curriculum in LA Unified at every level, secondary, middle school, high school. And so you can see the seeds of it taking place because we are not giving our kids what they need to be equipped with what's happening in this world. We look at all the conflicts that we see, and there's roots in hate, and the original hatred is anti-Semitism. And as a board member, I will make sure that we do a better job of bringing Holocaust education, making it a primary part of elementary, middle, and high school curriculums. It doesn't get to be just a day in the middle of World War II in your world history class. That's unacceptable, and we see the roots of it happening right now in all of our schools. Jewish kids do not feel safe in LA Unified.
Well, gentlemen, you've done a phenomenal job, I think, on fielding our questions tonight and
thank you.
Doing a very professional fashion to it. I think it's time. We're almost at the 9 o'clock hour at this point. I think it's time for us to go to our closing statements. As we talked about before, we'll let Scott, while he started with it, it's going to give you the last word on it, Dan, for tonight. Scott, go ahead. You got your 2 minutes to do your
Sure.
What questions you've heard and what things you think that we need to know.
Yeah.
To a chance to talk.
They were great questions, and these are everyday occurrences at the district that need to be monitored and watched. But I just want you to know that I do bring 50 years of experience to what I'm talking about, all levels of the district, all areas of the district. I do understand the laws. I do understand how they work. And, like Ms. Schwartz mentioned, Dan really doesn't know all of the laws pertaining to LAUSD, and I don't know every single one either. Let's be honest, I don't know every single one, but I do have an idea of what our communities want. And it's very important. I make use of my experience to make sure that the kids remain focused, and local control is very important. I am the elected board member of Ward District 3 in the San Fernando Valley. I will fight for my schools, my 105 schools, unless they redistrict again, my 105 schools in the San Fernando Valley. I visit every one of my schools. I know what they need, and I make sure they get what they need. Some things I can provide. Other things I'll make sure the district provides through maintenance and operations or gardening or construction. I'll make sure. But my schools are very, very important to me. I have the responsibility of all the schools in LAUSD, but my constituents matter too. They're the ones who elected me, and they're the ones who will make sure that they get everything they need for the kids to have a great education, and parents involved in schools. Very important.
Thank you, Scott. Dan, you're up. Got your 2 minutes.
Well, thank you guys very much for a very rangy conversation. I think we hit a lot of topics, and glad to engage with all of you guys again. So, I'll just close by quoting one of the most famous mathematicians and physicists in the world, Albert Einstein. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We need someone in LA Unified who's unafraid to just tell the truth and lay the facts out as they are and take action in doing something and actually do something about it. And that's who I am. I'm a teacher. I'm a math teacher. I'm an LA Unified parent. And if elected, I'm the only LA Unified board member that would actually come in with math experience and budget experience and provide the level of oversight that LA Unified needs. And I have made change at every single level. I make change in the classroom every day, changing kids' opinions about themselves. I've made change at the school level. I helped turn around LA Unified's most struggling high school. And I've made change at the district level. I started a philanthropy that brought new funding to LA Unified to increase arts programs throughout the district and brought free breakfast to every student. So I've done it at every level of the district, and I'd love to do it for Board District 3, for Sherman Oaks, for Woodland Hills, for the community that I've called home for the last 20 years. So I would love your support and looking forward to meeting as many WHO members as possible as our campaign continues for the next 40 days. But thank you again for this opportunity to share a little bit about who I am and talk about all these issues. I really appreciate it.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for putting your time in and for handling the questions and making my job easy to where you're not fighting with each other on stuff we usually see going on a lot of times in these things. So we deeply appreciate that. We just want our community to be able to get information, to have an understanding. First, to see who people are, match people with the names that are going on to the ballot. We don't have that luxury in a lot of the other races that are going on. Take a look at the judgeships, for example, and some of the others. So we deeply appreciate that. Appreciate you handling these questions. Appreciate the fact that you're serving our communities in a lot of ways. We deeply appreciate that as well. For those that are still listening with us, we appreciate that too. If you like what we're doing and we're doing something good for the community too, join us. Join us, the Woodland Hills Homeowners Organization. Go to our site, WHHO.com, and you can join there. We deeply appreciate that. And we'll continue to provide information where we possibly can on things that are going on in the community and continue to watch the community, make sure that we are doing things that are making it a better place to work, live, and play. So in the meantime, we say to you now, we'll wait to see you for the next one coming up, hopefully in October, and have yourself a very blessed night. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your concerns for the community. Be blessed. Good night.
Thank you, John. And
Thank
your
you.
great panel members too. Great panel members. Thank you so much. Okay. All right.
Good night to you.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.